Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and friends, I am so thrilled to introduce you to the Harper Scarf today. Before we dive into the inspiration and materials and yes, style guide for this gorgeously textureful scarf, I want to tempt you to stick around to the end. I have some really fun ways to wear your scarf that I'm going to show you in the style guide, and then at the very end, I'm going to give you a special discount code. So now that hopefully you've committed to stick to the end, let's talk about the inspiration for the Harper Scarf. If you've seen many of my blah blah black sheep videos, you probably know that I have a very fantastic and beloved local yarn shop here in Wisconsin. Because I love to support them and I'll take any excuse to buy yarn, I always visit my local yarn shop on Local Yarn Shop Day. Last year in particular, as I perused about the shop, looking at all of the gorgeous yarns and deals that were going on, I noticed that almost all of the free patterns that were offered at Local Yarn Shop Day were knitting patterns. It's become kind of a tradition as a thank you to local yarn shops and to give back a little bit for yarn companies and some designers to provide free patterns to people who purchase yarn for the pattern on Local Yarn Shop Day. As someone who is absolutely pro local yarn shop and pro crochet, I wanted to be sure that the local yarn shops and the customers were feeling the love from the crochet community too. So last year after Local Yarn Shop Day, I started chatting with my local yarn shop owner, Sarah, about what was involved in offering these free patterns and if she thought it would be well received if I offered a free crochet pattern. She was incredibly encouraging and supportive and said, yes, absolutely, we would love to share your pattern. And not only that, but she offered to share my offer of a free pattern with other local yarn shop owners she knew. So as Local Yarn Shop Day got closer, I started plotting my design for Local Yarn Shop Day, and I had a real vision in my head of what I was going to make. First, I knew it was going to be a shawl. I wanted it to work from point to point, and I wanted it to have a post-stitch border along the edge. So I grabbed my yarn and I swatched, and I swatched, and I swatched, and I swatched. And I finally decided, stubborn as I am, that it was just not meant to be, that the vision I had in my head was not going to translate into yarn quite like I thought it would, at least not without a whole bunch of work that I didn't really have time for. So I've not given up on that vision, but I have shelved it for a later time. Once I decided to pass on my very specific vision, it opened me up again to essentially the whole entire world of stitches. I was a bit adrift for a few days as I looked at different stitch combinations and shawl constructions to decide exactly what I wanted to do. When I came across this stitch combination that's used in the majority of the scarf, I was enthralled with the high texture that the post stitches provided, but how this unique way of putting them together allowed also a really open and drapey fabric too, which you often don't see with post stitches. I also really love that you get this amazing texture with some pretty simple and repetitive stitches, so it's not out of the reach of even adventurous beginners. Once I found my stitch combination, I decided to go completely in a different direction, and instead of creating a shawl, I decided I was going to create a nice open drapey spring scarf. So I started at the point and increased to a nice wide scarf, and then I decided it was time to mix it up a little bit. So I added this fun little strip of a braided stitch. Because I was offering this for Local Yarn Shop Day, I knew that I wanted to keep the amount of yarn needed within reason so that it was more accessible to more people. So as I got working, I made sure that I stuck within the 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn that I have. Also leaving a little bit of a buffer though, so that if people's gauge was slightly off, they could still complete the scarf within the allotted yardage. Once I made my first scarf in this amazing speckled yarn, which we'll talk about in just a minute, I had an idea of a multicolored scarf. As I looked through my stash, I found these gorgeous skeins and knew that this would be such a fun scarf. Friends, I have to tell you that I love a good tassel, and when I saw the points of these scarves, I knew I was going to have to add a tassel to them. For the tassels on my first sample, I went all out, not only using the yarn that I used in the scarf, but also a couple fun neon colors left over from my Lumi Advent shawl. I made them super long and added 2 tiers at the top, and I just think they are a little extra, just like this gorgeous speckled colorway. Then I couldn't leave my second scarf naked, so I added these fun, simple, smaller tassels to this one too. Another way that I wanted this design to support small businesses was I wanted to design that really made hand-dyed yarn shine, whether it was speckled or highly variegated or semi-solid. That way this design supports both small hand dyers and the local yarn shops who often sell yarn from small hand dyers. So let's dive right in and talk about this very special hand dyed yarn. When I saw this colorway dyed up by my friend Jess of February Fiber Co., I was like, yes please, give me 10. She talked me down a little bit from 10, and we agreed to collaborate on this local yarn shop day scarf. This is Jess's fingering weight yarn base in the stunning color of Friendship Bracelet. This base is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. Each skein comes with 437 yards per 100 grams. This scarf lived at my local yarn shop the week leading up to local yarn shop day and for all of local yarn shop day. It got a lot of squishing and the yarn has held up super well. I'm seriously thinking I might need more of this colorway. I'm sure if you know me, you are not the least bit surprised that I had these skeins in my stash. This yarn is from Purl Talk, who is another Wisconsin maker. This is Purl Talk's You Soxy Thing yarn base in the colorways Lagoon and Magenta Mystery. This yarn is 75% superwash merino, 15% nylon, and 10% tencel. That tencel gives the yarn a really gorgeous sheen and the slightest bit of sparkle, but it's really subtle and super gorgeous. The Purl Talk yarn has 433 yards per each 115 gram skeins. All right, let's talk hooks. All of these gorgeous and amazingly deep textures are accomplished with a G plus 4.5 millimeter hook. So let's talk customization. The nature of the stitches in this scarf make it super easy to customize. You can absolutely and very easily shorten or lengthen the scarf to fit your needs. You start at the point and work post stitches expanding out until you hit the width of the scarf. Once you get there, you create your first braided pattern section. Then you go back into a nice long section of the post stitches. You have a second braided section, a shorter section of post stitch texture, and then the center braided panel. This is the middle of your scarf, and then you're going to mirror that back in the other direction. This is important to recognize because if you're going to add or subtract length to your scarf, you're going to want to mirror the changes you make on one side to the changes you make on the other side. So say you decide to shorten your scarf by 4 inches, you're going to want to shorten by 2 inches on the first half of your scarf and then 2 inches on the second half of your scarf in the same place so that that mirroring still happens. Expanding or decreasing the width of the scarf can be a little more complicated just because it's not a straight scarf. You need to have those increases and those decreases. But I think with a little bit of an adventurous spirit and a recognition of the patterns of how the decreases and increases are made, you could absolutely make that happen. Do keep in mind that any customization you make will change the amount of yarn you need. Another really fun way to customize your scarf that I think not as many people think about is color customization. There are so many fun ways you could combine colors to make this scarf really unique. I did a solid scarf in a speckled yarn and a semi-solid scarf in 2 colors of yarn, but the sky is the limit. You could mix a speckled and a solid yarn. You could do 3 or 4 or 5. You could even do a scrappy scarf where each section is a different color. There's a chart in the pattern with estimated yardage for each section so that you could make a fully scrappy scarf, or even a scarf that mirrors each side, or any other color combination you want, and know exactly how much yardage you need before you even dive in. All right, let's talk styling your Harper scarf. I've already worn my Harper scarf in this video in some of my favorite kind of classic ways to wear scarves, and I'm going to show you those first, but be sure to stick around because I have some really fun and unique ways to style your scarf that I think you're going to want to try. To start off, one of my favorite ways to wear a spring scarf when it's really chilly is to wrap it around a whole bunch. This is also fun because it really shows off your tassels. So I'm going to start with one side nice and short, and then I'm just going to wrap it around, keeping the scarf nice and flat and nice and tall until I get back to the front and I have my 2 short little tassels and a really nice cozy amount of fabric around my neck. Now, of course, if it's getting warm where you are, which we're definitely leaning towards, you're not going to want all this fabric around your neck. So with this nice open texture of this scarf, it's great to wear it in a really open fashion too. I do that by loosening up the center part of my scarf so that it's away from my neck and cool enough to wear even on warmish days. Since I have this center stripe in my scarf, it's really easy to notice when everything is symmetrical and lined up really nicely. If you want to go somewhere in between nice and loose or super cozy, you can wrap it around like this. Simply keep one end a little shorter, wrap around your head once, and then toss that other side back over your shoulder. And that's a good happy medium between tight around your neck and super warm and really loosey-goosey. So fun. All right, let me show you a couple of really unique ways to wear your Harper scarf. We're going to start off by wrapping one end around and having it be a little shorter. Then we're going to wrap the rest of the scarf around our neck once. Then we're going to take the long end and cross it over the shorter end, reach all the way down through the other layers of the scarf, pull it up through the center, and then you're going to weave it back down through that loop there, so that both of your tassels are kind of hanging out there at the bottom, and you've got this fun little knot around your neck. This can be adjusted to be a little looser and away from your neck, or you can tighten all of that up so it can be super cozy in the winter. All right, for this last way you're going to wear your Harper scarf, you're going to find your center braided panel. You're going to grab it and fold your whole scarf in half. Then you're going to pinch so that you have kind of a loop up here at the top. You're going to reach your hand through the top of the loop, grab the scarf, and pull it through so that you have another loop with the scarf wrapped around it. Then you're going to take this whole thing, you're going to wrap it around your neck, keeping that hole right there. Grab the other end of your scarf and pull it through. Then you can see I've got a lot of fabric here. You can adjust that by pulling it back and then moving this fabric around and pulling your tassels down, or leaving your tassels open and giving yourself a little more space around your neck. And then you can spread this fabric out and give it a little zhuzh. Another fun way to knot and wear your scarf. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed learning about the inspiration, the yarn, and how to style your Harper scarf. As a little thank you for sticking around, I'd love to give you a special discount code. You can use the code 20Harper to save 20% off the Harper scarf. I hope you enjoy making and wearing your Harper scarf as much as I do. If you complete a Harper scarf, I would love to see it. Tag me on social media, share it with me in an email, or even create a Ravelry project so that I can see it and so can anybody else who's interested in making a Harper scarf. Thank you so much for joining me today, and happy crafting!